And so why is it that where does power come from names? What power is derived within names? Well, in the process of naming things, like where is the power derived? Well, for instance, if you name something, it's like if you put a name to something, it becomes more stable, right? It becomes more defined. Say names may a name may strengthen or reduce not an idea. Sure. Like names may strengthen or reduce an idea or a physical form, right? Say, like for instance, there's something creeping about in the dark, right? And the person, say like the caveman, is particularly scared of that thing creeping about in the dark. So they conjure up some word and they give it a name, and now it has a name. It depends on how the caveman actually sees that thing creeping around in the dark. If it's a particularly brave caveman, they may think, why who is that fellow creeping around in the dark there? Are they scared to approach me, right? And, maybe they'll give it a name, something like puny shadow, right? It's like, I know what is small, and this thing's creeping around in the dark like a shadow. That's a puny shadow. I don't gotta worry about that guy. I don't know why he's creeping around out there. If he comes any closer, he's probably gonna meet his end, right? I'm gonna hack him up. I'm probably gonna have him for dinner, right? But like a thing that's creeping around in the shadow, you're less inclined to think it's some puny shadow. And if it is a puny shadow, right, all the more reason to be scared of it, because we fear what we don't see. And what better way to sort of explain or to sort of contain the unexplained? What better way is there than first to identify it with a name? It's like, what is that thing creeping around in the dark? It's probably a monster. Whatever the word monster means. The word monster may mean nothing, right? But say you give it a name, and over time, people see enough monsters, right? It's the word is going to define itself as something like some asshole creeping around in the shadows that probably wants to get me. So yeah, some scary ass dude, some scary ass giant creeping around in the dark shadows, trying to get me, trying to get my lunch, or trying to disturb my peace, trying to steal my fire. And so the word monster, words and names. I didn't realize I said word. The name monster. Yeah, I believe, or I believe. It's funny that I say I believe. It's more like there's this idea I stumble upon that words are lesser names, or something like words are secondary names. So the word or name monster, right? It is defined by the perception that the person who grants it a name has of it. Names. Oh, yes. Now, on the idea of greater and lesser names, imagine, oh geez, why do I think of these terrible examples? Imagine imagine you're in Nazi Germany, right? You're in a concentration camp. They strip you of your clothing, everything you own, right? They take out your gold teeth, all your jewelry, everything, right? You're bare naked in the cold. You're starving. You've been reduced to an animal, and they give you a black and white outfit, all striped up, and then On that outfit there's a number. There's a set of numbers. You no longer have a name, or at least you can no longer be identified with the name that you were born with, but for that number, which is bound on the outfit that they've given you now. So that is your name now. Your name is a set of numbers, right? It's to this is okay. This is where it comes from. The idea, with the power of names. It's like, say your name was something recognizably great, something like Alexander. Alexander is a great name, right? Considering its historical, considering the last great guy that wore that name, Alexander. Alexander is a great name. Say your name was once Alexander and now you're 623456 or something, right? 6237. Something numerically ridiculous, right? So like now that is your now that is your name, right? How do you feel about that name now? Or maybe your name was Theon once. Maybe once your name was Theon, and you were an outgoing guy. You went on raids. You cut off dudes' heads. You shot people up with arrows. You went to war. You went to whorehouses. You had all the women. You had money, right? You could buy whatever you wanted. You were a boisterous guy. You were an ambitious guy, and then one day something terrible happens. You're kidnapped. They throw you in a dungeon. They trick you. They cut off your manhood. They reduce you to your lowest state, and then they strip you of your name, and now your name is Reek. Your name is Reek now. You're no longer Theon Greyjoy, right? Of the great house of the Iron Islands. Now your name is Theon Greyjoy. Now your name is Reek. Now your name is Reek. How do you feel about that name now? How do you feel about that name? How do you feel about that name? Right? So the power of names. It's a funny. It's a ridiculous thing. It's like, where do names derive their power? You could say power is a social construct. Is it? Who even says that? I'm not quite sure. I don't think I've ever heard someone say that. Although a lot of social constructs are things imbued with power, right? A social construct. Social constructs are something that people create to contain, in order to contain chaos and transform a society into a habitable order. And so it's like the power of names can. I don't think it's. Is it intentional? Sometimes it's intentional, and maybe other times not. Right? And yeah, it's like names have an intrinsic power. It's like, whether you like it or not, this name is going to have power. Like, say your name is something like America, right? And also, I suppose, like, the power of names, the power of names, of course, we decide how much power a thing has, and a thing like a name. We are the ones that decide. With the example of the caveman and the monster in the forest, right? It's like, what does monster mean? Is it something, gigantic and scary and life-threatening, or is it something, I can stomp on with my feet, and tyrannize with my fire, right? Like, what does that mean? So names have power, and names that power is dictated by the people who perceive and name things, right? Here's a good example: the N-word. Yeah, the N-word is a good example, right? Like, it started off as a derogatory term. It still is, but then it was there was like a lesser version of that. A lesser version of that. Although, like, of course, like, the irony is that, the N-word. What is the root of the N-word? Negro, right? It's like a Hispanic word to my understanding, right? Hispanic word. They, some guy, some plantation owner, he put a twist on it. Maybe like maybe that's how they talked back then. They put a twist on it, and then it became a derogatory thing, like a racist thing, and then the people who the racism, the people on the receiving end of the racism over time, they sort of, they sort of. It's like, yeah, okay, all right, okay, well, we understand what you're trying to say here. We understand, right? And then they took it and they made something else out of it. So like now it's like, you say the word in all its inclinations, right? In all its gradations. It's like, what are you saying? Are you saying the color black? Or are you trying to impose racial superiority, or are you trying to call me, a brother of yours? Are you trying to be homely with me? Right? So it's all very funny. It's like, well, not funny. Well, sure, say you could say it's funny, but it's amusing and fascinating like that. It's amusing and fascinating like that. I had some questions written down here. So what happens when you don't have a name? Well, no, you can't not have a name as long as you have a system of language and a language that means things, right? Language is names and words, right? As long as you have a system of verbal communication, you can't not have names. Like, even if you don't have a good name, even if you have a derogatory name, or Jane Doe, John Doe, it's like, yeah, that's your name, John Doe, right? It's like, yeah, sure, who cares if John Doe is the name of a missing person or a corpse? It's like, yeah, that's your name. Sure, you have a common name. It's not a very special name, but at one point it was. At one point it was, and but it's a name nonetheless. Names. What is the importance of names? Names. The importance of names. To acknowledge existence of things. To acknowledge the existence of things, right? It's like it's something. Here's an important thing about names, and by extension words. It's like something is, well, it goes back to the example of the monster in the dark. It's like say like something is happening. Oh yeah, like say something is happening, something's going on, but no one's talking about it, right? I think that is something else that is distinctly human, that separates us from lesser animals, right? It's like something can be happening and no one can be acknowledging it, right? Maybe because either they're not paying attention, or actually, in most cases, if something is noticeably happening, most likely people are ignoring it. For the good or worse, that that decision may bring about, right? So something can be happening and no one is acknowledging it. But maybe someone gets fed up and they do decide to say something, right? And then suddenly that thing which was seemingly invisible, starts happening. Like it starts. It is a name is given onto it, and suddenly it is visible. Suddenly it is a visible thing, right? It's like I knew the left part of my body. The left part of my body was numb and dead, right? But my brain was the left side of my body, which is partially destroyed. The part of my brain which would acknowledge that was numbed to the degree that if you pointed it out to me, I would not have cared, or I would have forgotten it the moment that you mentioned it. But maybe say you pour some cold water on that part of my brain, right? And suddenly I wake up and I have somewhat of a fully functioning brain than I did a few moments ago. Suddenly I notice the numb and partially dead left part of my body, and then I start weeping. I'm crying, like, what the hell happened to me? I remember what happened to me. Why am I half dead? This is all very terrible, right? What the hell is this? How could I have lived all this time, all these several minutes, without realizing what was wrong with me? Right? It's a very sad situation. It's all very sad, right? And until the cooling wears off, and then I revert back to that state, and then I just keep going on. I don't acknowledge it anymore. I just keep going on, dragging my leg and dragging my hand, and dragging my left leg and hand, all limp, but I'm not really thinking about it, right? It's like names pronounce the existence of things. It's like a thing may exist, but you don't have to acknowledge it. But once you acknowledge it, now it really exists. Now it's really there. Now it's really there. And that means now you have to confront it in some way. You have to now what do I do with this thing which I've acknowledged exists now, which I've decided to give power to? It's like whether you like it or not, by naming a thing, you give it power to whatever degree that power, of course, entails. Yes, this other thing I wanted. In any case, I've talked about it. Right, the offense of being called a lesser name, like, hey, you, come here. Hey, you, right? It's like, hey, why are you calling me that? Hey, I have a name, by the way. I have a name. My name is great. My name is Theodore, right? Like the president. My name is America, and that is something nationalistic, right? Because I'm an American, red stripes, white stars, red and blue stripes, red, blue, white. Like, okay, I'm having a brain malfunction here. How does the American flag look like? Red, blue, and white stripes, right? Red, blue flag, red, blue, white flag. No, the blue is in the box with the stars. Yeah, red and white. Red-blooded American. My name is America, right? It's like it's which is also funny, like depending on the political spectrum that you're on. It's like if you're the kind of person that fancies to burn the flag, you're not going to be so happy about your name being America. Yeah, but in any case, such is the power of names. Yes, that's why names are sore, sore. Names is so important, and I'm particularly proud of my name. Actually, uh, it's a great name. Well, I'm not going to talk about it, but just so you know, my name is great. My name is great. So I realize it's like if you're called something, maybe something typical, something anyone can recognize. Say, with the example of Alexander, but I suppose not everyone knows their history. Sure, like even the name Napoleon, right? Maybe people may know Napoleon more than they know Alexander, and say that you look up to the guy Napoleon, right? Some people look up to Napoleon, and you can see why. It's like yeah, yeah, of course, right? And people look up to Napoleon, so you may say your name is Napoleon. You and the people who know that name will recognize like wow, this is a powerful name, right? This is a powerful name. Although it goes back again. It's like some names can be controversial, and it's like either people think your name is great or people think your name is contemptible, right? I mean, like you certainly, in any case, just because your name is great doesn't make it a good name, right? Like like now we're all thinking of that example, right? Like that typical example, right? Yeah, he was a great man, but what mother or father or sane father wants to name their child, that name, right? It's like, are you trying to curse me, right?